I'll put you under that lake," Patricia shrieked when I confronted her. This entitled woman, a real Karen if there ever was one, had actually listed my private lake online for sale. $50,000. To random investors. And as if that wasn't enough, she called the cops, claiming I had threatened her. But she didn't realize who she was dealing with. I've spent 15 years as a real estate expert. I know every loophole, every trick in the book. And I knew exactly how to shut her down. There was something about her property she hadn't discovered yet, a detail that would flip the script entirely. Now, let's just say Patricia can't even set foot near my lake anymore. Want to know how I pulled it off? There are 3 wild twists to this story. Every morning, I sit by that lake with Duke, my golden retriever, letting the calm water soothe me. This place isn't just land, it's a memory frozen in time. My wife, Emily, used to dream about this kind of life. She'd smile, her eyes sparkling as she flipped through travel magazines. "Marcus, when we retire, let's buy a ranch with a fishing lake," she'd say. But life is a cruel way of tearing dreams apart. 3 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light and ripped Emily away from me forever. I couldn't stand to stay in our old house, where every corner still whispered her name. So, I sold everything and bought this 5-acre ranch with a 2-acre lake, the very same one Emily had once clipped out of a magazine. It was my way of keeping her dream alive. After 15 years of evaluating and appraising properties, I'd seen every underhanded scheme in the real estate game. But when I moved here, I was done with that world. I wanted nothing but peace. Duke became my shadow, my last gift from Emily, given to me just 2 weeks before the accident. Out here, I found solitude. The ranch was far enough from town to avoid pitying glances, yet close enough to run errands when I needed. And the lake? Oh, the lake. Crystal clear water framed by willows that danced with every breeze. Most evenings, you'd find me on the shore with a fishing rod in hand, Duke curled at my feet, the soft lapping of water easing my heartache. Then, 6 months ago, Patricia Gray arrived, and my quiet sanctuary began to unravel. From the start, something about her was off. She was 48, sharp-tongued, and boasting with fake charm. Within a week of moving in, she declared herself president of the Meadowbrook Women's Association, which was laughable considering our community barely had 20 households. She went door to door with that plastered-on smile, pushing petitions for economic development and community upgrades. Most neighbors humored her, but you could feel the eye rolls the second her back was turned. People started calling her that city woman, and not in a flattering way. At the grocery store, she'd corner anyone unlucky enough to be in the same aisle, rambling about untapped potential and modernization plans. What none of us realized then was that Patricia wasn't just annoying, she was dangerous. Turns out, she'd fled the city in disgrace after her real estate firm imploded. She'd been caught forging signatures and pocketing deposits on properties that were never even for sale. She owed the bank over $200,000, and on top of that, she'd borrowed $50,000 from some very unforgiving people. "If I don't pay them in 3 months, they'll break my legs," I'd later overhear her sobbing into her phone. She'd even changed her name. Patricia Coleman became Patricia Gray, dyed her hair, and moved to our quiet little town, hoping to outrun her mess. But debts don't vanish just because you change your zip code. Her big plan: rebrand our peaceful neighborhood into the Patricia Lake Eco Resort. She had glossy brochures, a curated list of investors, and a polished sales pitch ready to go. The star of her scheme? My lake. My quiet, private lake, Emily's lake. She'd combed through county records, spotted the water rights, and convinced herself that if she could gain access, she'd make millions. In her mind, she wasn't a scammer, she was a visionary. The fact that the lake wasn't hers, just a minor obstacle. Then came Monday morning, the day everything spiraled. I woke up at 6:30, brewed my usual coffee, and fed Duke. We were about to head out for our morning walk when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Odd, I thought. Then another call. And another. By 6:47, my phone was lit up with more than 50 missed calls and dozens of text messages. "Hi, is this Marcus? I'm interested in the lake property. I'll pay $60,000 cash today. I'm flying in from California tomorrow. Please confirm." My stomach dropped. Hands shaking, I opened my laptop. And there it was. My worst nightmare in high definition. Patricia had blasted my lake all over online real estate groups and marketplace listings. Incredible investment opportunity. Private 2-acre lake in pristine condition. Perfect for development. Price to sell, $50,000. Contact, Patricia Gray, authorized representative. She'd even uploaded drone footage of my land, complete with aerial shots and polished development mock-ups showing where she imagined cabins and docks could be built. My refuge, my last link to Emily, reduced to a sales pitch. Duke must have sensed my rage because he started whining as I grabbed my keys. My first thought was to call the police, but this needed immediate action. I stormed down the quarter-mile stretch to Patricia's house, Duke racing behind me. She was out front, watering her roses, that fake smile plastered across her face. "Good morning, Marcus. Isn't it a lovely day?" she chirped. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, "You're selling my property on the internet." Her smile didn't budge, but her eyes turned icy. "Oh, Marcus, don't be so dramatic," she said smoothly. "That lake has been sitting there, unused, for years. I'm helping our community see its potential, jobs, opportunities, growth. The lake is mine, my private property. You have no right." I stepped closer, fists tight. "Rights?" Patricia let out a sharp laugh. "Do you even have proper documentation, or are you just squatting on public land?" "Because I have connections at the county assessor's office, and they've told me those property lines are, let's say, unclear." Every word was a lie. My deed was flawless. Every tax bill paid on time, every document airtight. But the sheer confidence in Patricia's voice made me hesitate for just a second. Then I noticed her hand shifting behind her back, fingers flying across her phone. "Don't think you can scare me," she snapped, her tone climbing. "I know exactly what you are, bitter, lonely men who think they own the whole world." Before I could respond, her expression morphed in an instant. Fear, fake and theatrical, twisted her features as she stumbled backward. "No. Please, don't hit me. Somebody help me. He's going to kill me," she screamed, pitching herself into a row of flower pots, shattering them across the driveway. I froze, stunned, as her phone, already on speaker, broadcasted her panic straight to emergency services. "He said he'd bury me in that lake. Please, someone, call 911. 5 minutes later, sirens shattered the quiet. 2 police cruisers skidded into Patricia's driveway, lights flashing. 4 officers jumped out, hands hovering near their holsters. Patricia ran toward them like a damsel in distress, mascara streaking down her cheeks, hair tangled. "Thank God you're here. This man, he threatened to kill me." The lead officer fixed sharp eyes on me. "Sir, step back and keep your hands where we can see them." "Officer, she's lying," I said firmly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I came here because she's illegally trying to sell my lake online." "Sir, lower your voice. Hands visible. Now." His tone left no room for argument. Duke growled low beside me, hackles raised, and I had to grab his collar before things escalated. The next 30 minutes crawled by like hours. Officers separated us for statements. Patricia delivered an Oscar-worthy performance, painting me as some unhinged, violent neighbor. I showed them the listings and screenshots on my phone, but the skepticism in their eyes burned. Then salvation arrived, in the form of Mrs. Henderson, the quiet widow who lived between our properties. She had security cameras trained on her yard. When the officers reviewed the footage, it told the truth. There I was, standing perfectly still, Duke at my side, while Patricia threw herself to the ground in a dramatic fit. No threats, no raised hands, just her stage performance. The sergeant's jaw tightened. Making false reports to emergency services is a serious crime. Patricia's crocodile tears dried instantly. "That video doesn't show everything. He threatened me before." The sergeant cut her off with a sigh. "Enough. Both of you need to handle this civilly. No more confrontations. Don't call us unless there's an actual emergency. Sir, stay off her property." As the cruisers pulled away, Patricia glanced back at me with a smug little smirk. She'd lost this round, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't finished. Duke and I trudged back home in silence, my mind spinning. She was desperate. The lake wasn't just water to her anymore. It was her lifeline, her last shot at clawing out of debt. But as we reached the edge of my property, something clicked in my memory, a detail from my years in real estate. Easements, abandoned plots, forgotten parcels of land that slipped through the cracks. That night, I pulled out my old survey maps and fired up my laptop. If Patricia wanted a fight, she'd chosen the wrong man. This widower still had a few tricks up his sleeve. By midnight, I'd found something, a small note buried deep in the county records, something Patricia had definitely missed. She'd just sicked the cops on me with a false report. But now, I had uncovered a secret about her land, one that could destroy her plan entirely. The next 3 nights blurred together, a haze of caffeine and bloodshot eyes. My dining table vanished beneath a mountain of property records dating back to the 1950s. Duke hovered nearby, resting his chin on my knee every so often, sensing my obsession. Every piece of land leaves a paper trail. After 15 years as an appraiser, I knew exactly how to follow it. I combed through decades of records, cross-checking plot numbers with tax histories, refusing to stop. This wasn't just about a property line anymore. This was about protecting Emily's dream. The glow of my laptop lit the room as I compared county maps with yellowed survey sheets, searching for even the smallest inconsistency. Meanwhile, Patricia escalated her campaign. Every morning at 8 sharp, she'd lead small groups of investors down the road past my property, pointing at my lake like it already had her name on it. From my window, I'd watch her hand out glossy brochures, complete with photoshopped images of luxury cabins dotting the shoreline. Patricia Lake Resort and Spa, the brochures declared. She'd even built a slick website, complete with virtual tours and investment packages. Her audacity was unreal. Then came the events, weekend preview parties right in her backyard. She pitched tents, popped champagne, served appetizers, all while Duke barked furiously every time someone leaned too close to the fence. And each time, Patricia smiled sweetly and told investors, "Don't worry, the current occupant will be relocated soon." By the 3rd night, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. Thomas Murphy, 72 years old and sharp as ever, knocked on my door, a casserole dish in his hands. His family had farmed this land for 4 generations. "Marcus, you look like hell," he said bluntly. "That woman's got the whole county talking. 40 years I've lived here, and I've never seen anything like this circus. She's trying to steal my land." "Thomas," I said, sliding my laptop toward him, showing him the listings. His face darkened as he read. "My granddad always said the slickest thieves wear the cleanest suits," Thomas muttered. "You need help, you ask? Folks remember when you and Emily moved here. We're not letting some city con artist take that from you." By then, I was running on fumes. Duke barely touched his food, unsettled by my manic pacing and sleepless nights. My eyes burned from staring at documents until numbers danced in my vision. Around 2 a.m., I found myself sitting in the quiet, staring at Emily's photo on the mantel. "I don't know if I can win this," I whispered. "She's got money, connections. Maybe I should just sell and walk away." Duke whined softly at my feet. And then, like a spark in the dark, I remembered Emily, 2 days before the accident, standing on the dock, arms spread wide as the sun melted into the horizon. "This is perfect, Marcus," she'd said, laughter in her voice. "Promise me we'll never leave." I had promised. I'd thought we had decades to keep that promise. Now, it felt like a sacred oath. Fueled by that memory, I dove back into the records with new resolve. At 2:15 a.m., I found it, buried deep in a county survey book from 1960. Over the decades, as farms were split and properties redrawn, a small, oddly shaped piece of land had been left untouched, a 75-square-meter strip, wedged perfectly between Patricia's eastern property line and the access path to my lake. Plot X, the surveyor had labeled it in faded ink. Unnumbered, ownership uncertain. The fatigue evaporated in an instant. I dug deeper into the tax rolls and found the last recorded owner, Joseph Wilson. Died in 1987. No heirs. No claims. The land had been forgotten for almost 40 years. And it wasn't just any random patch of dirt. It was the choke point, the only path Patricia's property had to reach my lake. Without crossing that strip, she'd have to cut through 2 miles of protected wetlands, which was impossible without federal approval. I cross-checked satellite images. It was exactly as I thought. That forgotten sliver of land was the key to everything. Hands trembling with excitement, I photographed every document, every map. Patricia thought she had me cornered. She didn't realize she'd been building her empire on a foundation that didn't even belong to her. I didn't sleep. By 7 a.m., I was standing at the county land office when it opened. Rita, the clerk who'd helped me a dozen times over the years, blinked in surprise. "Marcus, you're here early. What's going on?" "My lake's under attack," I said grimly, explaining Patricia's stunt. Her eyes narrowed. "Plot X," she said, pulling up the ancient records. "I remember that one. Wilson died without a will. No heirs, no claims. The county should have seized it for unpaid taxes decades ago, about $380 total, but it slipped through the cracks." "Can I buy it?" I asked, heart pounding. "Not directly," she said. "It has to go to public auction. I'll post the notice today. The auction will be in 3 days. But honestly, who else would want 75 square meters of overgrown dirt? Word spreads fast in small towns." By that afternoon, Patricia already knew. I spotted her car parked at the courthouse that morning, and I knew instantly she was digging through the same records I had. That evening, I ran into her at the grocery store. "Marcus," she said, voice sugary but sharp underneath, "I hear you've taken an interest in that little strip of land. Starting a garden, maybe." She was fishing for intel. I smiled casually, pretending I didn't notice her probing. Just clearing up some boundary paperwork. Nothing exciting. Her eyes narrowed, her smile never reaching them. "Well, may the best bidder win. Though, honestly, I can't imagine why anyone would waste good money on that useless scrap." She was bluffing, trying to rattle me. But the fact that she was even talking about it told me everything. Patricia was nervous. Perfect. I had 3 days to get ready. That's when I thought of William Johnson, a retired theater professor who lived 2 towns over. Years ago, I'd appraised his house, and we'd kept in touch. I gave him a call. "William," I said, "how would you like to make $500 for an hour's work?" After I explained my idea, his laughter rang through the phone. "Corporate espionage in small-town America," he said, delighted. "What's my character's motivation?" We rehearsed for hours. William would pose as a developer, a big-city investor looking to assemble small parcels for a project. His role was to push the bidding high enough to make Patricia sweat, but not so high that he'd actually end up winning the land. Auction day arrived beneath a dull, gray drizzle. The county meeting room was nearly empty, just a few locals leaning back in metal chairs. Patricia walked in first, wearing a sharp navy power suit and carrying a leather briefcase like she was heading to Wall Street. A few minutes later, William arrived, perfectly in character. Rumpled sport coat, thick glasses, juggling 2 phones, looking like a busy man juggling $1 million portfolio. I stayed in the background in my usual jeans and flannel, playing the quiet country boy part. The auctioneer didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. Plot X, 75 square meters. Opening bid, 500. I raised my hand. 600. Patricia snapped instantly, barely waiting for the auctioneer to acknowledge me. William slid into the act effortlessly. 1,500, he said, his voice bored, like it was pocket change. Patricia's head jerked toward him. She hadn't expected competition. 2,000, she said sharply. 2,100, I counted. William leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. 5,000, he said smoothly. This plot is exactly what my clients are looking for. Patricia's face flushed. She fumbled with her briefcase, pulling out maps, desperately trying to figure out what William knew that she didn't. The auctioneer's eyes gleamed at the unexpected bidding war. 5,000, going once. 7,500, Patricia barked, her voice tight. William made a dramatic show of pretending to call someone on one of his phones, pacing in front of the room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. 10,000, Patricia nearly shouted, standing now, eyes wild. The room went silent. William paused, sighed theatrically, and shook his head. That's beyond my authorization. I'm out. I gave a slow, deliberate sigh and dropped my hand. Too steep for me. Congratulations, Ms. Gray. For a brief moment, triumph flashed in Patricia's eyes. But by the time she signed the paperwork, the realization hit. She had just spent $10,000 on a useless patch of dirt. In the parking lot, William collected his envelope, still laughing. Marcus, he said between chuckles, did you see her face when she realized she might have been played? But the best part, she had no idea what was coming next. While Patricia obsessed over her expensive, meaningless purchase, I quietly filed the paperwork for Plot Y, the matching strip of land on the opposite side. That same afternoon, I bought it for $800 in a private sale. No drama. No competition. Now, Patricia owned one piece of the puzzle. But without the second piece, the key piece, she was stuck. She'd paid $10,000 for nothing, while I had secured the strategic access point for less than $1,000. That evening, Duke wagged his tail as if he understood. We've got her, boy, I told him, scratching his ears. Tomorrow, we build our fence. And then she'll learn exactly what it costs to try to steal from a man guarding his wife's dream. At 4:30 the next morning, my driveway looked like a small construction convoy. 3 trucks rolled and loaded with steel posts, concrete, chain link fencing, and a compact excavator. I'd hired Jake Morrison and his crew, the best fence builders in 3 counties. I gave them one order: finish the job before sunrise. Jake, a bear of a man with arms like steel beams, studied the plans by flashlight. 3-meter steel fence, electronic gate, concrete anchors, cameras on the corners, he read aloud. Then he looked at me, half grinning. Planning for war, Marcus? Something like that, I said evenly. Neighbors are about to get a lesson in property lines. Jake chuckled knowingly. Say no more. Built 5 anti-Karen fences already this year. My guys know the drill. You'll be locked down before she finishes her morning coffee. Duke supervised the entire operation with his tail wagging like a metronome, clearly thrilled by the commotion. The crew moved like a well-oiled machine. Post holes drilled, concrete poured, steel set perfectly straight. The rumble of diesel engines and the whine of power tools filled the early morning darkness. By 5:45, the skeleton of the fence was already in place, a solid, immovable wall across the 75-meter strip of Plot Y. As the first pale light crept across the horizon, I spotted movement in Patricia's house. Bedroom lights, then the kitchen, and then, like clockwork, her back door slammed open. She came charging out, silk bathrobe and slippers, hair wild, face twisted with fury. What the hell is all this noise? She screeched. Stop this immediately. I stepped forward slowly, calm as ever, Duke sitting loyally at my side. Morning, Patricia, I said, voice polite but edged with steel. Just making some improvements to my property. You know what they say, early bird gets the worm. Her gaze darted to the rising wall of steel, and I saw the exact moment the truth sank in. You can't do this, she shouted, voice sharp enough to wake neighbors half a mile away. This is harassment. You're disturbing the peace. I'll call the police. By all means, I replied pleasantly. I have every permit. For agricultural properties, construction hours start at 4:30 a.m. Everything here is perfectly legal. I held up the official permits, letting her clearly see the county stamps shining under the morning light. Patricia's face shifted through shades of crimson, anger, shock, and panic all at once. That's the access road to the lake. You can't block that, she stammered. Actually, I can, I replied evenly, my tone calm but sharp. This here is Plot Y, my property. Your fancy Plot X. I pointed toward her overpriced patch of dirt. It stops there. Without this strip, you don't have a path to the lake. Not a legal one, anyway. Jake's crew kept working like seasoned pros, unfazed by the drama. It was obvious this wasn't their first job in the middle of a property feud. By 7:15 a.m., the job was done. 8 feet of galvanized steel fencing stretched across the boundary, topped with angled deterrent wiring set firmly into deep concrete footings. At the entrance stood an electronic gate with a keypad lock and 2 night vision security cameras. A solar array powered the system, making it fully self-sufficient. Bold red and white signs, private property, no trespassing, video surveillance, hung every 20 feet along the line. What had once been a quiet dirt path now looked like the entrance to a restricted compound. Jake gave a satisfied nod as his crew began loading up. "That'll hold off just about anything short of a bulldozer," he said with a grin. "Want us to hang around for the fireworks?" "No need," I told him, handing over the cash. "You and your team did perfect work." By 7:45, the trucks were gone, leaving behind only the gleaming fence and Duke pacing proudly along the perimeter, tail wagging as if he knew what we'd accomplished. Patricia's first big investor tour was scheduled to start in 15 minutes. At 8 o'clock sharp, she strutted out of her house dressed for battle, navy business suit, pearl necklace, polished heels, leather portfolio tucked under one arm, and that ever-present salesman's grin. Behind her, a convoy of high-end vehicles lined the road, carrying no fewer than 25 prospective investors. I recognized the type instantly from my years in real estate: hedge fund sharks, developers, venture capitalists, all eager to snatch up what they thought was the next big project. Patricia was all charm as she paraded them toward the path. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, voice bright and polished, "welcome to the future site of the Patricia Lake Eco Resort. In just a few steps, you'll see the crystal waters that will anchor our premium, sustainable getaway destination." The group followed her eagerly, checkbooks practically burning holes in their pockets. But as they rounded the bend and reached the access road, every single one of them froze. Silence. There, in front of them, was my brand new fortress of steel and cameras. The sun glinted off the mesh fencing, the red lights on the cameras blinking steadily as they rotated to track the group. Every 20 feet, those bold no trespassing signs left no room for misunderstanding. The hopeful energy drained from the crowd as confusion set in, quickly curdling into irritation. Miss Gray, a silver-haired man in an impeccably tailored suit, stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Is this some kind of joke?" "I flew in from Seattle for this," a woman added coldly, arms crossed. "My time is worth $2,000 an hour. And this looks like fraud." "Where's the access you promised?" another investor demanded, his tone a growl. "I want my deposit refunded. Now." Patricia's painted smile cracked. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This is temporary," she said, voice quivering. "Just a minor boundary issue. Nothing to worry about. We have full access." But even from a distance, I could see the beads of sweat forming at her hairline. That was my cue. Duke and I strolled casually from my porch, my deed folder in hand. "Morning, everyone," I said with a calm smile. "Perfect day for a tour, isn't it?" 24 heads snapped in my direction. Patricia shot me a glare that could have stripped paint. "This is the man causing trouble," she spat, her voice high-pitched and desperate. "He's illegally blocking public access." "Nothing illegal about it," I replied smoothly, flipping open the laminated deed and holding it up for the crowd to see. "Plot Y, purchased fair and square at a county auction. That means this strip is private property. Her plot X is over there," I added, pointing toward her useless land. "Unfortunately, without this strip, there's no legal way to reach the lake unless you plan to sprout wings and fly over my fence." The lead investor, the man with silver hair and a gaze sharp enough to cut glass, fixed Patricia with a deadly calm stare. "Miss Gray," he said slowly, "are you telling us you don't actually control lake access?" Patricia floundered, her confidence crumbling. "Of course we do," she insisted, her voice trembling. "This is just a misunderstanding." I didn't let her finish. "No misunderstanding," I said lightly, almost helpfully. "She bought a dead-end strip of land. I own the only access to the water. Without my permission, there's no way to reach the lake." Phones were out instantly. One young investor was already on a call, likely to his attorney. Another started snapping photos of the fence, of Patricia, of me standing calmly with Duke by my side. Heated murmurs rippled through the group like a wave. The woman from Seattle looked ready to explode. "I wired you $25,000 as a deposit," A man barked at Patricia, his face dark with rage. I want every cent back. Now. That single outburst cracked the dam. More voices erupted, sharp and furious. 15,000. 30 grand. I just transferred 50,000 yesterday. Patricia's skin, once flushed a furious red, had drained to a ghostly white. Duke picked up on the storm in the air, planting himself firmly between me and the crowd, muscles tense, his quiet growl promising trouble for anyone who crossed the line. Please, Patricia begged, her voice wobbling, let's go back to my house. We can discuss this like reasonable adults. But the investors were already scattering, their anger boiling over. You'll hear from my attorney. This is fraud, plain and simple. I'm calling the FBI. Expect a lawsuit by Monday. Car doors slammed one after another, the sharp cracks echoing through the still morning. Engines roared to life, tires spitting gravel as the parade of luxury cars tore away, leaving a choking cloud of dust and one very humiliated Patricia standing in its wake. She spun toward me, eyes blazing with hatred. You've destroyed everything, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? I kept my tone casual. Yeah. Protected my property. Kind of like you should have protected those deposits. Her face twisted into something feral. Open this gate. Right now. I have legal access. No, Patricia. What you have is Plot X, a 75 square meter strip of land that stops right at my fence. Congratulations. You paid 10 grand for a sidewalk to nowhere. With a snarl, she rushed the gate and rattled it violently, the steel chain link clanging like a warning bell. Open this, she shrieked. I'll sue you. I'll ruin you. Duke barked sharply, a single deep boom, and she instinctively stepped back. Sue away, I said evenly, though you might want to save some of that money for refunding all those investors. As if the morning weren't dramatic enough, Thomas and Linda Murphy rolled by in their pickup, slowing to take in the spectacle. Thomas leaned out the window, a smirk tugging at his weathered face. Morning, Marcus. Nice fence, Real sturdy-looking. He turned to Patricia, eyebrows raised in feigned concern. Everything all right, Miss Gray? You seem a little flustered. Linda leaned across her husband, her voice sugar-coated. Oh, Patricia, where did all your investors go? They disappeared so quickly. Patricia glared at them with venom, but Thomas only chuckled. 40 years in this town, he said, shaking his head. Never seen someone out with themselves quite like this. Bought yourself a road to nowhere, didn't we? Linda's smile was sweet but sharp. Like those city folks who buy oceanfront property at high tide. Sometimes you need a bit of local knowledge to avoid expensive mistakes. Before Patricia could fire back, Sarah Wilson came jogging up, phone in hand, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Sarah ran the local grocery store and, unofficially, the town's rumor mill. Oh my God, Patricia, she said breathlessly. Someone posted a video of the investors leaving. It's already at 300 views, and people are sharing it everywhere. She held out her phone, showing shaky footage of luxury cars peeling out and angry voices echoing in the background. The comment section was merciless. Scam artist exposed. Lock her up. Patricia Gray, fraud queen. Patricia swayed on her heels, her perfect morning collapsing into a viral nightmare. This isn't over, she spat, voice low and shaking. I have resources. I have connections. You've just made yourself a powerful enemy. I met her glare calmly. No, Patricia. You made an enemy when you tried to take my lake. Today, I just made it clear I wasn't going to roll over. She stormed off, heels striking the pavement like gunshots, but her shoulders trembled as she disappeared around the bend. Rage. Fear. Maybe both. Duke and I stood at the fence, the morning sunlight spilling across the land. My lake glittered in the distance, untouched and secure. Good boy, I murmured, scratching behind his ears. We did it. But even as I savored the moment, a knot of unease tightened in my gut. Patricia wasn't the type to admit defeat. Those investors would want their money back, and she'd already burned through the cash, permits, planning, and probably her personal expenses, too. A desperate person is dangerous, and Patricia was beyond desperate now. Thomas parked the truck and wandered over, his expression serious. That was something else, Marcus. But you'd better be careful. That woman's got the look of someone with nothing left to lose. I know, I admitted quietly. But she started this war. Just remember, Thomas said, eyes narrowing, winning a battle doesn't mean you've won the war. She'll come at you another way. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a social media post. Patricia's counterattack had begun, and I had no illusions about how nasty it could get. Still, for now, I had my fence, my lake, and the sweet satisfaction of watching 25 angry investors drive away from her scam. Duke and I headed home for breakfast, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. Patricia had already proven she'd lie to the police and con her clients. What would her next move be? The answer came at dawn. At 6 a.m. sharp, the wail of sirens shattered the quiet. 2 police cruisers rolled up my drive, lights flashing like a warning beacon. Patricia had escalated. Officers Rodriguez and Kim stepped out, their faces carrying the weary patience of people used to dealing with neighborhood disputes that spiraled out of control. And there was Patricia, stepping from her car with a predator's precision. Her arm was wrapped in a neat bandage, her makeup subtle but expertly applied to make her look pale, fragile, wounded. She wasn't alone this time. Jeremy Peterson, the jittery newcomer from the old Baker place, hovered behind her, clearly uncomfortable but coached within an inch of his life. "Officers," Patricia began, voice quivering with just the right amount of fear. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Yesterday's incident left me terrified. As I told you, Mr. Marcus attacked me when I tried to discuss the fence." Jeremy saw it all. With a dramatic gesture, she indicated her bandaged arm. Jeremy swallowed hard and stepped forward, his voice robotic. I saw Mr. Marcus push Ms. Gray. She fell and hurt her arm on the fence. From behind my screen door, Duke growled low, a rumble of warning that vibrated in the air. Rodriguez's brows knitted, but professionalism kept his tone neutral. "Mr. Marcus, we need to ask you about an alleged assault that took place around 4 o'clock yesterday." I stayed calm, because I'd been expecting this. "Officers," I said evenly, "I have 8 security cameras covering my property. Every inch of that fence line is recorded in high-definition video and audio. Would you like to review yesterday's footage?" For the first time, Patricia's mask cracked. She hadn't noticed the cameras in her fury the day before. "Those videos could be fake," she snapped quickly. "Everyone knows about deepfakes now." Officer Kim raised a brow and pulled a tablet from her vest. We have software to verify authenticity. Mr. Marcus, can you provide us the footage from yesterday afternoon?" I opened the door, inviting them inside while Duke stayed glued to my side, hackles still raised. On my laptop, I pulled up the recordings. The timestamp read 4:07 p.m. Crystal clear video filled the screen. Patricia marched up to the gate, alone. She examined the lock, kicked the metal several times, then deliberately scraped her arm against a protruding bolt before stalking off. The entire stage performance captured in multiple angles, every second undeniable. The officers stood frozen, their expressions unreadable. Jeremy looked like all the color had drained from his face. Rodriguez fixed him with a sharp, unrelenting gaze. "Mr. Peterson," he said, his voice like steel, "would you like to correct your statement? Filing a false police report is a felony. Think carefully." Jeremy collapsed under the pressure almost instantly. She offered me $5,000, he stammered, his voice breaking. "To say I saw it happen. I needed the money. My little girl's sick and needs treatment. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His eyes glistened as he lowered his head, shame written all over him. Patricia's carefully maintained image shattered. Her expression hardened from fake fragility to pure venom. "You absolute fool," she snapped, spitting venom in Jeremy's direction. "I should have known better than to count on a coward like you." Rodriguez's patience was gone. "Ms. Gray," he said coldly, "you're under arrest for filing a false report and attempting to bribe a witness. You have the right to remain silent." As the cuffs clicked around her wrists, Patricia turned her glare on me. Her eyes burned with unfiltered hatred. "This isn't finished," she seethed. "You have no idea who you're up against. I have connections you couldn't begin to imagine. You'll regret this." Her words sounded hollow as the officers escorted her to the cruiser. Jeremy, pale and defeated, quietly gave his full statement, detailing her attempt to buy his testimony. By evening, Patricia was out on bail, but her arrest had already left a fresh stain on her record, a very public failure in her spiral of desperation. I didn't feel triumphant as the patrol cars disappeared down the road. Instead, exhaustion settled in. The question lingered in my mind: just how far was Patricia willing to go? That evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. While I'd spent the day in quiet relief, Patricia had spent hers plotting online revenge. By the time I checked, every social platform in the region had exploded with her version of events, a poisonous, carefully manufactured smear campaign. Posts screamed lurid headlines. Local tyrant threatens single woman's safety, one bled. Violent widower hoards community resources, claimed another. She'd gone all out, heavily edited images to make me look dangerous, fake screenshots of text messages I'd never sent, even fabricated emails implying I'd threatened to poison the lake if anyone else came near it. Her lies twisted my life into a grotesque fantasy, a deranged recluse who'd supposedly killed his wife for insurance money and now terrorized any woman daring to stand in his way. The story spread like wildfire. Strangers who had never met me were leaving furious comments. Men like this shouldn't be walking free. Somebody needs to look into that wife's death. Boycott anyone doing business with him. Reporters flooded my inbox. Neighbors I'd known for years called, their voices hesitant, asking if it was true. Weiss, I started receiving threats from online vigilantes who believed every word. Sarah Wilson called, panic sharp in her tone. "Marcus, this is insane. She's dragging your name through the mud. Half the county thinks you're some monster." Duke, sensing my unease, pressed close against my leg, whining softly as if to remind me to stay grounded. For a fleeting moment, I thought about firing back, arguing point by point, trying to reason with the noise. But then I remembered something I'd learned years ago in real estate: never fight a liar on their terms. The only way to win was to lay out the truth so clearly that no one could ignore it. For the next 2 hours, I worked methodically, building a single, devastating post. No anger, no emotional outbursts, just evidence. The post was titled, "The Truth About Patricia Gray," also known as Patricia Coleman. Facts don't lie. I started with the basics. Her 2018 mugshot from Florida for real estate fraud, easy enough to pull from public records. Then came the screenshots of her original posts trying to sell my lake, timestamped long before any of our disputes. I included the video footage showing her deliberately scraping her own arm against my fence, the audio where she tried bribing Jeremy, and the police report numbers to back it all up. But the most damning part came after some digging. Using her real name, I uncovered a trail of scams spanning 3 states. Florida, 2018, convicted of forging property documents. Texas, 2020, arrested for running a fake vacation rental scam. California, 2022, skipped town before trial after embezzling from elderly clients. Each time, she posted bail and vanished, reinventing herself under a new name. The pattern was undeniable and damning. I linked to court documents, archived news articles, and testimonials from past victims. Then I ended the post with a single, quiet statement. "I'm just a widower who wants to fish in peace." Patricia Coleman is a serial con artist who preys on communities like ours. Here's the proof. Within an hour, it had been shared 500 times. By the 3-hour mark, over 6,000. The comments section became a flood of revelations and support. Thomas Murphy was one of the first. "I saw it firsthand. This woman tried to sell land that didn't belong to her. I've lived here 40 years and never seen anyone stoop this low." Then Sarah Wilson added her own post. "My cousin lost $5,000 to her scam," someone posted. "We're pressing charges." Linda Murphy added her own revelation. "Just learned her ex-husband divorced her after she stole his mother's retirement fund." Local news outlets pounced on the unfolding drama. Headlines screamed, "Serial fraudster exposed in Lakeside community." The reports ran her mugshot alongside interviews with angry victims. Within hours, someone had launched a website cataloging her countless aliases and elaborate schemes across multiple states. By the following day, The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit had officially opened an investigation into her interstate fraud network. By midnight, Patricia wiped every trace of herself from social media. But the damage was irreversible. Screenshots of her posts and the damning evidence I'd shared were everywhere, circulating endlessly. Her carefully constructed facade wasn't just cracked, it was shattered beyond repair. The tone of the phone calls I received shifted dramatically. "Marcus, I'm so sorry I doubted you. You didn't deserve any of that. Thank you for exposing her for what she is." Even Duke seemed to sense the change, finally stretching out on the porch beside me, his body relaxed for the first time in weeks. Together, we sat in silence, watching the moonlight ripple across the lake's surface, the same view Emily had loved so much. For a brief moment, I could finally breathe again. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. People like Patricia don't just disappear quietly. When someone has nothing left to lose, they can be dangerous. The following morning, my instincts were proven right. Her car was gone from the driveway, but there was no sign she'd left town. Instead, Duke's behavior set me on edge. He refused his breakfast and paced near the back door, whining with unease. When I let him out, he bolted straight to his water dish near the fence, barking with frantic urgency. I jogged over, my stomach knotting, and saw it, a slick, rainbow sheen floating across the water's surface. A chill shot down my spine. I dumped the water immediately and called the vet, my voice tight. "Dr. Martinez, I think someone tried to poison my dog. The water, there's something in it." "Bring him in now," the vet said sharply. "And bring a sample of that water." Thank God for Duke's instincts. He hadn't touched it. At the clinic, Dr. Martinez confirmed my worst fear, antifreeze. It's sweet to the taste, lethal in even small amounts. Patricia had tried to kill him. The realization flipped a switch inside me. Fraud, lies, defamation, I could deal with those. But trying to hurt Duke, the one piece of Emily I still had, that was unforgivable. I filed another police report, this time for attempted animal cruelty, and went straight to work. By nightfall, I'd upgraded the ranch with new motion sensors, stronger floodlights, and extra security cameras. Duke stayed indoors, staring out longingly at his yard, but I couldn't take any risks. Patricia had escalated, and now I had to be ready for anything. This was no longer about property disputes. This was war. Anderson, Edwards and Associates occupied an elegant downtown office, the kind of space that quietly screamed prestige and old money. Robert Anderson himself, a silver-haired man with sharp, calculating eyes, studied my case file, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. "Mr. Marcus," he said finally, setting down his glasses, "in 3 decades of practice, I've rarely seen a fraud case this airtight. Patricia Coleman, currently calling herself Patricia Gray, has violated at least 5 major statutes. What's most striking, however, is her consistency. This isn't random. It's a pattern, repeated across jurisdictions." He turned his laptop screen toward me, displaying a detailed report his team had compiled. My paralegal traced additional victims, 3 in Nevada, 2 in Arizona, and even an elderly couple in Maine who lost their entire retirement savings to one of her scams. She's been pulling the same con for more than 10 years. The scope of her deception was staggering. Patricia had perfected her hustle in rural communities where people still trusted handshakes and word-of-mouth promises. She'd identify undervalued properties, invent elaborate development pitches, lure investors with big promises, and vanish with their deposits once the scheme collapsed. The lakeside resort scam was just her latest reinvention. "What's our next move?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. Anderson leaned back, expression grim. "We file both civil and criminal actions. The civil suit will cover harassment, defamation, attempted theft of property rights, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The criminal complaints will address fraud, false reporting, witness tampering, and attempted animal cruelty. With her history, no prosecutor will dare offer her a plea bargain." For the next 2 hours, we documented everything. Every forged listing, every fabricated police report, every malicious post, every clip of security footage, every witness statement, including the vet's confirmation of the poisoning attempt. Anderson's team worked methodically, assembling a bulletproof case and cross-referencing it all with her prior convictions. As we wrapped up, Anderson tapped another document on the desk. There's more. After her Florida conviction, she skipped bail. There's still an active warrant. Texas has one, too. And California. They've been trying to track her down for 2 years. Once we file, she won't be able to run again. The walls were closing in, this time for good. Duke waited patiently in the lobby, charming the secretaries while I signed the paperwork that would finally end Patricia's reign of deceit and destruction. Meanwhile, Patricia's carefully cultivated world was imploding. Her phone rang off the hook, but not with sympathy or support, only fury. Where's my $5,000? I want my money back. Today. My lawyer will be contacting you. The investors she duped were no longer isolated voices. They had organized, sharing information and pooling evidence. The total fraud tally climbed to $113,000 spread across 23 victims. And the financial pressure was closing in fast. The mortgage company demanded payment. The dealership wanted their overdue lease addressed. Credit card companies flagged her accounts for delinquency. The empire she built on lies was crumbling. Desperate, she tried to hire legal help, but her name was now synonymous with trouble. Patricia Coleman, one receptionist said flatly, "I'm sorry, we're not taking new cases." 3 prior fraud convictions, another firm said. We'd need a $200,000 retainer upfront, and given the FBI investigation, we're declining representation. With nowhere left to turn, Patricia was finally realizing what it felt like to be cornered. Not even the most desperate lawyers would represent her. One attorney, blunt and unapologetic, told her, "You don't need legal counsel, you need divine intervention. If you're smart, you'll start working on a plea bargain before the court buries you." In a last-ditch effort, Patricia turned to the public defender's office, spinning her usual victim narrative. But the overworked attorney barely skimmed her file before shaking his head with a sharp laugh. "You scammed people out of over $100,000, he said flatly. "You own a house and a car. You're not poor, you're just broke because of your own crimes. Come back when you can pay for a private lawyer, or get ready to defend yourself." That week's community meeting was overflowing. Every chair was taken, and people lined the walls. Word of Patricia's schemes had spread like wildfire, and the neighbors who had once stayed quiet were ready to speak out. Walter Freeman, the actual president of the town council, banged his gavel. "We're here to discuss the situation with Patricia Gray," he announced firmly. "I expect everyone to keep their comments respectful and focused on facts." But the room was beyond civility. One by one, her victims stood up. She swore lake access was guaranteed, one woman said, her voice shaking with anger. "I gave her $8,000. She told my daughter she'd have a job at the resort," another added bitterly. "We invested our savings. Every penny. She's been dumping trash near my property for months," another neighbor said. "And my dog got sick after drinking from a puddle by her yard. Now I wonder if it was poison." Each story painted a clearer picture of a predator who had invaded their peaceful lakeside town and exploited their trust. Thomas Murphy, his face weathered from decades in the sun, stood slowly. His voice was steady, but every word carried weight. "I've lived here 40 years, he said. "Sure, we've had our disputes, but nothing like this. This woman came here to strip our community for her own profit. She targeted us because she thought rural folks were easy marks. She thought wrong." The room erupted in applause. Then Linda Murphy rose and added, "She tried to turn us against Marcus, a man who has been nothing but kind and respectful since losing his wife. That isn't just fraud. That's cruelty." When the vote was called, it was unanimous. Patricia Gray was officially banned from all community gatherings and declared unwelcome. It carried no legal force, but the message was deafening. She was finished there. Within days, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. She slashed the price, desperate for a quick sale, 40% below market, but buyers stayed away. "That's the fraud house," people whispered. "Bad luck, bad history." Real estate agents refused to take her listing. "Sorry," one told her coldly, "too much baggage. My reputation's not taking that hit. Try selling it online." Patricia was trapped, stuck in a house she couldn't sell, in a community that loathed her, with lawsuits mounting and no defense in sight. The hits kept coming. Her car disappeared one morning, repossessed while she screamed at the tow truck driver, who didn't even acknowledge her pleas. Utility companies sent disconnection notices. The illusion of success collapsed entirely, leaving nothing but the hollow shell of a con artist cornered by her own lies. Then came the trial. The courtroom was packed the morning it began. Patricia looked exhausted, her hair limp and her cheap, ill-fitting suit doing nothing to hide the panic in her eyes. Her lawyer, a bargain basement hire secured at the last minute, flipped nervously through her file, clearly unfamiliar with the mountain of evidence stacked against her. The prosecutor, Jennifer Walsh, didn't waste time. Confident and razor-sharp, she stepped before the jury and spoke with quiet authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "over the past 12 years, Patricia Coleman has left a trail of victims spanning 7 states. She is a predator who preys on small towns like this one, believing they are too quiet, too trusting, to fight back. Today, we will show that justice reaches even the most peaceful communities." The evidence was devastating. Security footage caught her lies in real time. Recordings revealed her attempting to bribe officials. Paper trails detailed every fraudulent lake transaction. And one by one, 23 victims took the stand, some traveling hundreds of miles to face the woman who had conned them. When it was my turn to testify, I laid out everything: the harassment, the fabricated claims against me, the attempt to steal my property, and, finally, the antifreeze in Duke's water bowl. Duke himself sat quietly by my side as the prosecutor explained how Patricia had tried to poison him. Several jurors shifted uncomfortably, a few visibly recoiling at the thought. Patricia's defense was laughable. Her attorney grasped at straws: stress, financial hardship, momentary lapses in judgment, but no excuse could cover 12 years of calculated fraud spanning 7 states. When Patricia finally took the stand, she fell back on her old tactic: victimhood. She pointed at me, spinning a wild story that I had orchestrated everything to steal her property. But Prosecutor Walsh eviscerated her in cross-examination, calmly pulling up her own social media posts where she had been advertising my land for sale before we had even met. The courtroom fell silent. There was no coming back from that. The jury didn't take long, just 4 to 7 minutes, to reach a verdict. Guilty on every single charge. 2 weeks later, the sentencing hearing sealed Patricia's fate. With her fresh convictions added to a list of unresolved warrants from multiple states, the outcome was grim. "Patricia Coleman," the judge said sternly, "you've made a career out of deception, showing no true remorse, only frustration that you were finally caught. You've destroyed lives, stolen dreams, and poisoned the trust that holds communities together. For that, this court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison, with no eligibility for early release for the first 5. Furthermore, you will repay every cent you stole, $317,000, across all jurisdictions where your crimes were committed." Patricia crumpled at the defense table. 18 years. At her age, it might as well have been a life sentence. When the deputies escorted her out in handcuffs, she turned and locked eyes with me. The anger was still there, but beneath it, something else. Defeat. Complete, unshakable defeat. A month later, Duke and I were back to our peaceful mornings by the lake. The water shimmered in the crisp autumn sunlight, calm and untouched. Thomas and Linda had organized a community barbecue to celebrate the return of quiet, though everyone knew it was really a Patricia's Gone party. Sarah Wilson showed up with her famous potato salad and the latest round of gossip. "Did you hear?" she said with a grin. "Patricia's in a federal prison in Kentucky. They've got her on kitchen duty now." From wannabe resort mogul to scrubbing dishes. The crowd burst into laughter, but I felt something more complicated, a fleeting ache, not pity exactly, but recognition. Patricia had been sharp, driven, and ambitious. If she'd put that energy into something honest, she could have built something real. Instead, greed and lies had consumed her, and now there was nothing left but the wreckage of a wasted life. Walter Freeman clinked his beer bottle against mine. "You did good, Marcus," he said, eyes steady. "You stood your ground against a bully and won. Emily would be proud." Hearing her name sent that familiar ache through me, but there was warmth too. I'd kept my promise. I protected what she loved most. Duke barked and darted after a butterfly dancing along the shoreline, his tail wagging furiously. Life had shifted back to something resembling normal, or at least, the new version of it without Emily. The lake was safe again. Ours again. That evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon, painting the water in streaks of pink and gold, I whispered softly into the cooling breeze, "We did it, Em. The lake is safe." Duke, wet from his playful splashes, trotted back and sat at my side. Together, we watched the day fade into night. Guardian and companion, bound by loyalty and love, keeping a promise to someone who was gone but never forgotten. Patricia was out of our lives, but Emily's memory lingered in every ripple of the water, every quiet morning, every brilliant sunset. Justice, I realized, doesn't always wear the same face. Sometimes it's a prison sentence and a pair of handcuffs. Other times, it's the simple peace of watching your dog splash through the water you fought so hard to protect. Both forms matter. Both forms heal. And that's the full story of Patricia Gray, Patricia Coleman to the federal prison system, the woman who tried to take my lake and wound up losing everything instead. People often ask me if I feel guilty about the 18 years she's serving. The truth? No. She made her choices. Every lie, every scam, every cruel attack. She tried to poison Duke, smear my name, and steal the place where Emily's memory still lives. She earned every second of that sentence. Today, the ranch is quiet again. Duke's getting older, but he still insists on our morning walks by the water. The community is closer now, bound together by the storm we weathered. We learned something important. When good people stand united, predators don't stand a chance, no matter how clever they think they are. Most evenings, I still sit in that same fishing spot, casting my line as the sun dips low. I think of Emily, of her laugh, of her dream, and I smile knowing we protected it, knowing we're still protecting it. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you for listening. Have you ever had to face down a nightmare neighbor? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. I read every one, and I love hearing how others find their strength. And remember, sometimes the sweetest victory is simply holding on to what's yours.